Now, how many uncontacted tribes are they aware of?
I think there's like over 100 different groups across the Amazon.
Not many people know this, but there are certain tribes around the world that seem to defy the very laws of physics. These people walk on fire without a single burn, whisper to deadly snakes, or even solve impossible math problems faster than computers, all without breaking a sweat. But how is this even possible, and why can't science explain it? Stay tuned, because what you're about to discover will blow your mind. The fireproof people. First on this list is the fireproof people. The fireproof people are tribes like the Sawau people of Fiji, who can walk barefoot across burning embers without getting hurt. This is called fire walking. It looks impossible because fire is hot, and skin should burn, but somehow they do not scream in pain or get blisters. The secret partly comes from science, which means that the ember's surface is not a perfect heat conductor, and if they walk fast enough, their feet don't stay in contact long enough to burn. But that's not the whole story. What makes it amazing is their mind power. The Sawau people believe in mental strength and spiritual focus. When they walk across the fire, it feels like they are bending the rules of the human body. Their feet, even though they are touching flames, seem untouchable. Now, the fireproof people are not the only tribe that defy the law of physics. In fact, the next tribe on this list is even more fascinating. Keep watching to find out what this tribe is. The Maasai tribe. The Maasai tribe lives in Kenya and Tanzania, and they are known for their bright clothes, colorful beads, and weirdly enough, their strong connection to cattle. Cattle are very important to them because they show wealth and status. The more cows a person has, the richer they are seen to be. At night, the animals sleep in the middle of the circle, while the people sleep around them, keeping them safe from lions and other predators. Even though the world around them is changing, the Maasai are still proud of who they are. The magnetic men. The magnetic men are people who can stick metal things to their skin. One of them is called Liu Thao Lin from Malaysia. His skin seems to pull spoons, forks, and even heavier objects, making them stay without falling. Despite how it presents itself, this is not real magnetism, but that doesn't mean Liu Thao Lin's skin is any less special. His skin has high friction that holds the metal in place. The snake whisperers. The snake whisperers, like the Vadi tribe in India, are people who seem to have a special power over snakes. They use music, often from a flute called a pungi, and gentle movements to make the snakes sway and move in a trance-like way. Though it looks like magic, the snakes are actually following the motion of the flute, not the sound. Still, their skill and bravery make it feel almost magical. Next, we have a group of people whose practices are so unusual that they even had movies based on their practices. Stick around, because what's next on this list will shock you. The gravity-defying Shaolin monks. The Shaolin monks are so strange and fascinating that movies and media have been made about them for years. These monks are famous for doing things that seem impossible. They can balance on sharp objects without getting hurt, and they even run up walls as if gravity doesn't pull them down. They break bricks with their bare hands like their skin is made of stone. But how do they do it? It's not magic, it's years of practice, training their bodies and minds. They learn how to move their energy, using focus and strength in ways most people can't. By mastering their movements, they seem to be able to defy physics. The Huaorani tribe. Next, we have the Huaorani tribe, which is fascinating because of their deep connection to the Amazon rainforest and their fierce independence. For generations, they lived as skilled hunters and gatherers, using blowguns with poison-tipped darts to catch animals like monkeys and birds. They also have a strong warrior culture and resisted contact with the outside world for a long time. Even today, while some have adapted to modern life, others continue to fight against logging and oil companies to protect their land. The Pygmies of the Congo. The Pygmies of the Congo, including tribes like the Baka and Uti, live deep within the thick forests of Central Africa. Their small size helps them move quickly and quietly through the dense trees, allowing them to hunt animals and gather food like fruits, nuts, and honey. For many years, Their way of life has stayed the same, passed down from parents to children. Even though the forest is their home, the Pygmies face many problems. Big companies cut down trees, taking away the land they need for food and shelter. Still, the Pygmies stay close to their families, hold on to their traditions, and fight to protect the forest they love. The Pygmies might be an interesting tribe, but they are not as fascinating as the next tribe on this list. The Chukchi tribe. For 40 years, the Chukchi tribe fought against Russian rule because they wanted to stay free and independent. This tribe lives in the cold, snowy Arctic circle of Siberia. They have learned how to survive in freezing weather by herding reindeer, which gives them food, clothing, and shelter. They also hunt sea animals like seals and whales. The Chukchi believe in spirits and have a strong connection to the polar star, which they see as a guide. Although some now work modern jobs, many still follow the old ways, honoring their ancestors and keeping their traditions alive for future generations. The lightning survivors. The lightning survivors are a small group of people who have been struck by lightning not just once, but multiple times. One of the most famous is Roy Sullivan, a park ranger who survived 7 lightning strikes. Lightning carries extreme voltage, which can sometimes reach 1 billion volts and can heat the air around it to 5 times hotter than the sun's surface. Surviving even one strike is rare, but being hit multiple times defies all odds. Scientists struggle to explain how the human body endures such shocks, especially since survivors usually have scars, memory problems, and nerve damage. The pain-proof fakirs. The pain-proof fakirs are Indian ascetics who do amazing things with their bodies. They lie on sharp nails, walk on burning hot coals, and even push sharp objects through their skin without feeling pain. It seems impossible, but they control their minds so strongly that their bodies do not react. Till today, science has not been able to fully explain how they do it. Deep-diving freedivers. Deep-diving freedivers are people who dive deep into the ocean without using oxygen tanks. They hold their breath for long periods and go down to great depths where the water pressure is very strong. Normally, this kind of pressure could make a person's lungs collapse, but freed divers have a special ability called the mammalian dive reflex. This reflex slows their heart rate, moves blood to important organs, and helps them survive underwater. Freedivers like Herbert Nitsch.
I can do like 30 dives in one session, whereas you can only do 1 or 2 deep dives in one session.
Have gone deeper than most people thought was possible. They train their minds and bodies to stay calm and use as little oxygen as they can. Superhuman memory tribes. Superhuman memory tribes are people with amazing brains. They remember everything, like books they read years ago or long lists of numbers. Their minds work fast, solving hard math problems in seconds. Some, like Daniel Tammet, see numbers as colors and shapes. It's like their brains use secret codes we don't understand. They don't forget easily, and their memories work like a camera, taking pictures of what they see. Scientists have tried studying them, but no one fully knows how their minds work. Next, we have an incredible group of people who can supposedly survive without food or water. Let's get into what these people are. The breatharians. The breatharians believe they don't need food or water to live. They say they get all their energy from the air and sunlight. This energy is called prana, which they think is a life force that keeps them alive. They often practice extreme fasting, going days, weeks, or even longer without eating or drinking. Scientists disagree with this and say the human body needs food and water to survive. Still, the breatharians claim their way works, pushing what we know about the body. Their lifestyle seems impossible, yet they continue to challenge science with their unusual beliefs. The gravity-resistant dancers. Next, we have the gravity-resistant dancers, who are people who move in amazing ways. They are break dancers and martial artists, like those who practice capoeira. They seem to fight gravity, balancing on one hand or floating in the air. Their bodies twist and spin, making it look like the rules of physics don't apply to them. These dancers train hard for years, mastering every move. Their skills amaze people as it looks like they are combining art with strength and science. The sonic healers. Some tribes, like the Xhosa in South Africa, use sound frequencies and chants to heal injuries or enter altered states of consciousness. These healers are called the sonic healers. These sounds they make seem to touch something deep inside the body and brain. People feel better, calmer, or stronger. While sound is a very important aspect of physics, scientists still haven't found out how sonic healers use it to heal. The electric humans. The electric humans, like Slavisa Pajkic, also known as Battery Man, have a strange ability. They can touch high-voltage electricity, the kind that would seriously hurt or kill most people, but nothing happens to them. Their skin does not burn, their muscles do not cramp, and their hearts do not stop. Scientists study them, trying to understand why they don't get hurt. Some believe their skin has extra thick layers, acting like a shield. Others think their bodies don't produce as much sweat, so there's less moisture to conduct the current. Whatever the reason, these electric humans might have strange electric capabilities, but their powers are nothing compared to what's next on this list. The night vision humans. In Southeast Asia, there is a group of night vision humans known as the Moken people. These people spend most of their time at sea, and their children have a special ability where they can see clearly underwater. This happens because they change the shape of their eye lenses, like sea animals do. It helps them find food and stay safe in the water. Scientists once thought only marine animals could do this, but with the Moken people in existence, it seems like that's not the case. The immortal yogis. The immortal yogis are mysterious people from India, like Devraha Baba, who are said to have lived for more than 250 years. These yogis practice deep meditation, control their breathing, and follow strict diets. Their bodies seem to age slowly, making people wonder how they live so long. Though science has not proven their age, their peaceful lives and spiritual practices continue to amaze many, challenging what we know about growing old. The human calculators. Human calculators are people who can solve really hard math problems very fast, sometimes even faster than a computer. Shakuntala Devi, for example, once multiplied two huge numbers, each with 13 digits, in her head in seconds. Scott Flansburgh can add and subtract large numbers so quickly that people think it's magic. Scientists don't fully understand how they do it. Some think their brains might recognize patterns in numbers that others can't see. Others believe they have an incredible memory that lets them store and recall math rules instantly. While human calculators are fascinating the world with their lightning-fast math skills, the cannibal tribes of Papua New Guinea push the limits of human behavior in an entirely different way. Cannibal tribes of Papua New Guinea. Strangely enough, some tribes in Papua New Guinea practice cannibalism, and they did so for spiritual reasons. These tribes ate parts of their dead relatives, believing this would stop worms from eating the body. They thought this honored the dead and kept their spirit alive. Other tribes ate their enemies after battle, thinking it gave them power and victory. Today, many of these practices have stopped because of outside influence, but the tribes still hold on to their cultural roots. They protect their ways, even when the world tells them to change. The surprising discovery of the ancient Egyptian royal. In 2011, while Egypt was in the middle of a revolution, with protests and chaos filling the streets, far away from the noise, in the quiet Valley of the Kings, something incredible was about to happen. A group of archaeologists from Switzerland, led by Dr. Suzanne Bickel and Dr. Alina Paulin Groth, was working near an ancient tomb called KV40. Their job that day was simple: to install a protective cover over the site to keep it safe. At first, it seemed like regular excavation routines, but as they dug and inspected the area, something unexpected caught their attention. This is where things get more interesting, so pay close attention. Just a short distance from KV-40, they noticed an odd, faint outline of what looked like the edge of a hidden shaft sticking out of the ground. It didn't seem to belong to anything they knew. At this point, they were running wild with imaginations, but with the revolution shaking the country, they couldn't afford to take chances. So to protect what they had found, they quickly covered the site with an iron lid and decided to wait until the situation calmed down. For months, they kept quiet about their discovery. Months passed, and the country slowly began to calm. So finally, in January 2012, the team returned to investigate the hidden shaft properly. With permission from Egypt's Ministry of Antiquities,
it's news that greatly distresses the former Minister of Antiques, Zahi Hawass.
In Egypt, we don't have people who knows about museology. Very little. How can you run a museum like this?
they removed the iron cover and peered into the shaft below. Their hearts raced as they descended, clearing away debris and rubble, and it didn't take long for them to realize they had found a tomb that had been untouched and lost for centuries. The tomb was small, with a single chamber of about 4.1 by 2.35 meters carved out of rock and rubble and debris filling most of the space. But as they carefully cleared the dirt, they stumbled on something unexpected. In the chamber was evidence of an older burial from the 18th dynasty. Among the debris, the team found broken pieces of canopic jars, which were used to store the organs of the deceased, as well as jar stoppers. There were also bits of coffins and cartonnage, the linen used in wrapping mummies, along with other items like glass, colorful ancient pottery called faience, leather, and even parts of old furniture. But it gets more exciting because they also discovered the broken mummy of a middle-aged woman who was probably the tomb's original owner. What they didn't expect, however, was the discovery of a partial wooden label with the name Princess Satia on it. But what they struggled to understand was who the label belonged to. Was it the woman in the tomb, or someone else from the past? As they struggled to fix this puzzle, they stumbled on what turned out to be the highlight of this expedition. If you're a lover of ancient Egyptian history, sit tight, because what you're about to hear will absolutely blow your mind. The unexpected discovery of Nehmes Bastet. Before the discovery of the tomb that had the remains of the 18th dynasty royal family member, they had found a black wooden coffin decorated with bright yellow hieroglyphs with a small wooden tablet, or stela, that had ancient inscriptions offering clues about the identity of the person that was buried there, placed beside it. The archaeologists couldn't believe their eyes. When the coffin was opened, the mystery deepened, as inside lay the mummy of a woman named Nehmes Bastet. Nehmes Bastet wasn't a queen or a princess, but a chantress of Amun, a temple singer who had dedicated her life to offering songs and prayers for the gods, and the stela beside the coffin, which showed her worshipping the god of the afterlife, was proof to that. The inscriptions on her coffin revealed that she was a woman of high status who had earned a place of honor in her time. Her coffin, made from sycamore wood and beautifully decorated, spoke of a woman who was highly respected in her time. As you would have guessed by now, the tomb was originally built hundreds of years earlier, during the famous 18th dynasty, the same period as great pharaohs like Tutankhamun.
At last, in October 1925, after 3 years of excavating Tutankhamun's tomb, Howard Carter and his team begin to open the king's coffin.
And was only reused over the years, which explains how the remains of Nehmes Bastet from the 22nd dynasty ended up there. Signs of this long history were everywhere: broken pottery, pieces of wood, even wasp nests, and water stains that showed the tomb had been open to the elements long before she was laid to rest. What made this find even more remarkable was how intact it was, as most tombs in the Valley of the Kings had been looted long ago, and their treasures had been stolen by grave robbers. But here was a tomb that had survived, with much of its story from thousands of years ago still intact. For archaeologists, it was like stepping back in time, uncovering a piece of history that had been hidden for years. Meanwhile, nearby in KV-40, they uncovered over 80 mummies from different time periods, including men, women, and children from various social classes. These discoveries painted a vivid picture of the valley as not just a royal burial ground, but a place that held the stories of many lives. As the team continued their work, the story of the valley grew even richer. Before now, this area was thought to be reserved for pharaohs and their closest relatives. But how was a temple singer, someone outside the royal family, buried in the Valley of the Kings? Well, it turns out that long ago, in the 18th dynasty, only the royal family and their closest companions were buried in the Valley of the Kings. But by the 21st dynasty, about 500 years later, the government authorized that the tombs be broken into and the materials should be recycled. During the break-in, all valuables like gold and wood, and even amulets from the mummies, including those of the pharaohs, were taken. Those who were tasked with this responsibility knew exactly whose tomb was whose, so they treated the pharaohs' bodies with care, rewrapping them and hiding them in secret places where they were found later.
Put through X-ray machines, then stored in nitrogen bubbles and carried in these special shock-absorbing vehicles. Hollywood movies like The Mummy have always been fascinated by haunted tombs.
But the other bodies didn't show the same respect. The broken skeleton found in one of the tombs, KV-64, was proof of this carelessness. Then, about 100 years later, in the 22nd dynasty, things shifted again. The tombs were no longer just for pharaohs, but also for families of priests and other important people. While the Valley of the Kings was still seen as a sacred place, it became more common to bury people of high rank, even if they weren't royalty. This is how Nehmes Bastet, the Chantress, ended up in KV-64, but the surprise doesn't end there. More discoveries near KV-64. As Bickle took a closer look at the tombs, she couldn't help but notice an intriguing connection between KV-64 and KV-40. The two tombs were surprisingly close to each other, with KV-64 being a bit larger and older. Bickle began to wonder if KV-40 was built nearby, so that the people buried there could be close to the lady in KV-64, perhaps for some deeper reason. It seemed that KV-40 had also seen at least two phases of use, much like KV-64. These phases occurred around the same time and in similar ways, but later, the tomb was looted and at some point was even ablaze, with signs of fire on the walls, ceilings, and the contents that were scorched and destroyed. Like KV-64, the rooms of KV-40 were filled with fragments of pottery, bits of wood, faience, fabric, and even human remains, most of which were covered in soot. And though a good part of it was destroyed, some fragments were salvaged for further study. Once cleaned, the fragments were sorted into two distinct groups, those from the 18th dynasty and those from the 22nd dynasty, while some were even pieced back together. But that's not all. Among the finds, what caught her attention was a sock, perfectly made for a small adult foot, about a size 3 in UK sizing, clearly designed to be worn with sandals. But Bickle's most fascinating discovery was pottery. After the team carefully laid out all the pottery shards they had found and successfully pieced them together, they were able to reconstruct 120 large jars, which had once held natron, which is a substance used in mummification and ritual remains. One of the seals on these jars had a red plate that seemed to have been deliberately broken and incorporated into the seal. This resembled an ancient ritual known as the breaking of the red pots, a practice that held symbolic meaning. Unlike other jars typically found in ancient Egyptian burial sites, which usually had inscriptions that listed only the contents, these jars were different, because aside from spelling out the jar's content, the inscriptions also had the names and titles of people, which was quite unexpected. Some jars had 2 layers of writing. The first layer had a roughly written inscription and was covered by a white coating, while the second layer had a much neater inscription in yellow, which was a rare color for writing in ancient Egypt.
Another interesting feature of many of these stone jars are the handles on the outside, stone bosses that have holes drilled through them.
In some cases, the second inscription was a cleaner version of the first, but in other cases, the 2 inscriptions were different and had on them its contents and the names of who it was for. Upon a closer examination, it was discovered that the names of the jars belonged to 23 women and 4 men, all of whom were royalty. The men were labeled king's sons, while 12 of the women were called king's daughters, which was a title they held for a lifetime. For some reason, Bickle also believed the names on the jars matched those of Amenhotep III's daughters and granddaughters, whose names appeared in reliefs from other tombs, like TT 192, a noble's tomb in El Asasif. As Bickle continued her work, the discoveries in KV 40 and KV 64 kept piling up, giving her new insights into ancient Egyptian burial practices, but there were a few technical challenges that prevented her from conducting some fascinating analyses. Normally, carbon-14 dating could have helped determine which bodies belonged to the original phase of use and which were from later periods. Unfortunately, the only lab in Egypt that could perform this type of analysis had outdated technology and required a much larger sample size than what they could provide. And because artifacts and remains cannot be removed from Egypt, the necessary work couldn't be done outside the country. In addition to that, samples had been taken to analyze the DNA of the human remains, which could have been another breakthrough. But again, the only lab capable of doing this work was temporarily non-functional. The samples have been stored, and we are waiting for the situation to improve so that this analysis can be carried out. Bickle believes that when the DNA work finally happens, it could offer some exciting revelations, especially since some of the individuals in the tomb might be related to Amenhotep III's royal family, as previously suggested by the inscriptions on the pottery and other finds. Given that KV-64 held the remains of someone outside the royal bloodline, by the early 1980s, as Charles and Diana's marriage faltered, Charles found solace in Camilla. Their relationship evolved into a full-blown affair, which became one of the worst-kept secrets within royal circles. For Diana, discovering the truth about Charles and Camilla was devastating. She once famously said, "There were 3 of us in this marriage, so it was a bit crowded." The public, however, was largely unaware of the full extent of the affair at the time. Diana continued to put on a brave face, carrying out her royal duties with grace and charm. Yet the cracks in her marriage with Charles were becoming increasingly visible. Camilla, though rarely in the public eye, remained a looming presence in their relationship. As the years went on, the tension between Diana, Charles, and Camilla only deepened, and the public became more aware. From the moment she married into the British royal family, Lady Diana Spencer seemed to embody the image of a modern-day princess. The life that awaited Diana was far from the fairy tale that people imagined. Her journey as the Princess of Wales was full of emotional turmoil, personal struggles, and public scrutiny, which overshadowed even her humanitarian efforts and the joy of motherhood. Diana entered her marriage with high hopes, but the reality of royal life hit hard. Almost immediately, she found herself struggling to adapt to the rigid structure of the royal family. But the heart of Diana's troubles was the distant and cold relationship with her new husband, Prince Charles. Though they appeared happy in public, behind closed doors, their marriage was something else. And you know the most painful part of it all? Diana's heart had been scarred by the divorce of her parents when she was just a young girl. She had hoped that her own marriage would be a refuge from the pain of her childhood, a union filled with love, laughter, and joy. She dreamed of a partnership that would be the opposite of her parents' failed relationship. But fate had other plans. As she stood by Charles, she felt the sting of betrayal, the ache of disappointment, and the crushing weight of unfulfilled dreams.
It is announced from Buckingham Palace that with regret, the Prince and Princess of Wales have decided to separate. Their Royal Highnesses have no plans to divorce, and their constitutional positions are unaffected.
The little girl who had once hoped for a love that would last a lifetime was now a woman facing the harsh reality of a love that had never truly been hers to begin with. Despite her public image as a glamorous princess, Diana often felt isolated and unloved. She famously remarked in an interview, "There were 3 of us in this marriage, so it was a bit crowded." The emotional toll of her troubled marriage began to manifest in physical ways. Diana struggled with bulimia, an eating disorder that haunted her for much of her life as a royal. The pressures of royal life, coupled with her feelings of inadequacy and the constant media scrutiny of her appearance, contributed to her battle with food. Diana later spoke openly about her bulimia, admitting that it was a way of coping with the immense emotional strain she was under. That was not even all. In addition to bulimia, Diana faced periods of severe depression. She felt trapped in the royal family, with few people to confide in. Well, which of these tribes do you believe is the most incredible? Let us know in the comments section. Remember to like, share, and subscribe for more. Also, click the following video shown on your screen. You will enjoy it.